How Not to Live Your Life is a British sitcom, written by and starring Dan Clark that aired between 27 September 2007 and 22 December 2011 on BBC Three, about a neurotic 29-year-old man who is trying to navigate his way through life but is not helped by his bad instincts. After a pilot, the show debuted in 2008 with moderate ratings but grew over the course of the three series, doubling its ratings each series because of its cult following. The third series got viewing figures of 1.5 million across the week and was the second most watched show on BBC iPlayer. When BBC Three controller Danny Cohen left the channel, new controller Zai Bennett cancelled several comedies, including How Not to Live Your Life. Background: in 2006, Clark was commissioned to write two short comedies for Paramount Comedy One, Dan Clark's Guide to Dating and Dan Clark's Guide to Working, both of which he co-wrote with Gary Reich. Clark was the main character in both shows, and Isabel Faye appeared in Dan Clark's Guide to Dating, which was shown as 10 one-minute clips on the channel, with lists of 10 things people shouldn't do on a date, such as 10 things you shouldn't wear on a date. The clips began to appear on the internet and the BBC approached him about doing a 30-minute show in the same format. The result was the pilot for How Not to Live Your Life, using the same style of short clips within a traditional sitcom. The pilot was filmed in a real house in London and first aired on BBC Three on September 27, 2007. The pilot featured a number of actors who did not appear as regular characters in the series: Sally Breton, Rich Fulcher, Claire Keelan and Bruce McKinnon. Although, Isabel Faye, who also appeared in the pilot, was in the final episode of the first series, The Break-Up, as Fiona. The BBC then commissioned a full series, which was filmed in a studio in Glasgow. Clark wrote each episode and directed 4 episodes. The first series started broadcasting on BBC Three on August 12, 2008 with the first episode, Home Sweet Home, which introduces the 4 main characters of Don, Abby, Carl and Eddie. BBC Three showed the first series on Tuesday evenings at 10:30 p.m. The series often features the character of Don giving a narrative and talking to the camera, as well as cutaway dream sequences where he gives alternative scenarios such as put-downs or physical moves he wished he had thought about at the time. For instance, in episode 4 of Series 1, The Young Ones, these include 8 Ways Don Shouldn't Dance, Alternative Ways to Deal with Annoying Teenagers, and What Don Wished He Had Said to His Flatmate, Abby, while she was necking with her annoying and square boyfriend Coolface on the sofa. Plot Series 1 Don is a pessimistic, single 29-year-old, failing to navigate his way through the very basics of life. His biggest enemy is his overactive mind, which plays out countless scenes of things he shouldn't do or say. When he moves into a house left to him by his recently deceased grandmother, he meets Eddie, her over-enthusiastic carer who doesn't want to leave. Don soon realizes there are advantages to letting him stay. To help pay off the huge back payments on the house, Don decides to get a lodger. He ends up choosing Abby, the girl he was in love with as a teenager and whom he still fancies. However, Abby isn't single. She has a boyfriend, Carl, who Don refers to as Cockface. Series 2 In autumn 2009, BBC Three commissioned a second series of How Not to Live Your Life, which was filmed in the spring of 2009. It started on September 15, 2009. The plotline is somewhat different from the first series. Abby and Carl did not feature in the series, and Mrs. Treacher has become a main character as well as having more amorous humor towards Don, along with a new character named Samantha. The series featured Julian Barat as a minor character, Jackson. Series 3 On November 2, 2009, BBC Three recommissioned the show for a third series. This was confirmed by Dan Clark on both his Twitter and Facebook page, and on September 29, 2010, Dan Clark posted on his official Twitter page that the third series was scheduled to be aired in the beginning of November. On October 21, 2010, Brown Eyed Boy Productions issued a press release on their website stating that Series 3 will begin with a double bill of episodes 1 and 2 on November 8, 2010 at 22:30 on BBC Three. Laura Haddock returned to play Samantha. Other actors included Noel Fielding as Marcus, Tom Daly, and Rupert Vansittart as a posh girl's father. Christmas special, It's a Don Defowl Life. On May 27, 2011 it was revealed by BBC Three's controller Zai Bennett that the show would return for a Christmas special, however he also revealed that this would be the last as the show has been axed. The Christmas special was aired on BBC Three at 9 p.m. on December 22, 2011. Several months after Series 3, there have been some changes in Don's life. The art gallery has closed and he is working in a shoe shop while Jason is managing an upmarket supermarket. Still coping with his unexpressed feelings for Samantha, Don receives a letter from his solicitors informing him that he may sell the house if he so wishes. He decides to sell it to a property developer for a large sum of money who plans to demolish it. As Mrs. Treacher is becoming increasingly difficult to look after, Don and Eddie decide to put her in a retirement home, a decision that is made unavoidable by Don selling the house. After a lot of mishaps, and Samantha believing that Don and Abby are a couple after Abby returns to the house, Don finally tells Samantha how he feels and the two become an item. Also, Don decides against selling the house and things return to normal. A 5 Things That Happened Next segment reveals the futures of the main characters. Don and Samantha married on New Year's Day 2012 and eventually had 9 children, all of them male. Eddie fled the country after the police discovered he was a serial killer who grooms men for 3 years before killing them with kitchen utensils. Mrs. Treacher became a popular session drummer under the name Dee Tree. Don published his memoirs entitled How Not to Live Your Life. They were later made into a BBC One sitcom starring James Corden. Cancellation. Dan Clark has been heard saying to fans after his recent live shows that they are unsure as to whether there will be a 4th series. On May 27, 2011 it was revealed by BBC Three's controller Zai Bennett, that the show had been cancelled along with fellow BBC Three comedies Coming of Age and Lunch Monkeys. He explained that they were good to the channel, but have had their time. According to that statement, Christmas special of How Not to Live Your Life was the final episode. Characters: Donald Don Danbury, also known as the Double D, also known as Dickhead, also known as Oscar Linetti. Don is the protagonist, often acting in a socially awkward and diva-style manner. He received the house, in which the story centers, after his grandmother died. Don has been shown to have a crush on Abby, though he eventually falls in love with Sam. Sam and Don get married at the end of the series. Samantha Parker, Don's new housemate in the 2nd series, and is regularly unimpressed with Don's selfish behavior. She is a student at university and also has very similar characteristics to Don. She has bad relationships, likes to drink, and previously had a job with which she was not happy. She is much smarter than Don and uses this against him on countless occasions. However, she admires him for the excitement his life gives. Abby Jones, Abby used to go to the same secondary school as Don, and stayed with Don in his house after applying for a room to rent, but is away traveling during the 2nd and 3rd series. She is a primary school teacher. In the 1st series, she is dating Carl. Abby and Carl split up and subsequently got back together in the last episode, however what happened to their relationship is left unanswered. She is always very patient towards Don's weird behavior. Carl Minford, Carl was Abby's boyfriend. He earns the nickname Cockface from Don, and the two show visible signs of hatred towards each other. However, Abby often attempts to get Carl to be more tolerant with Don, and tries to ease hostility between the two. He moves in with Don and Abby at the end of Series 1. Edward Eddie Singer, Eddie was Don's grandmother's carer. However, even after her death, he inexplicably continues to work for Don, caring for him in much the same way he'd care for an elderly client, doing housework, preparing meals, and even offering Don sponge baths in bed. Throughout many episodes there are continuous gags that joke on the relationship between Eddie and Don, mostly making them appear to be a gay couple, such as The Odd Couple. His father is a 16th Indian, which Eddie reveals to Don, who was confused about his surname. Mrs. Treacher, also known as Mrs. T. Gollum, Yoda or Dobby, Don's nosy next-door neighbor who refers to him as Dickhead. In Series 2, Eddie has become her carer following her husband's death. She often tags along to events like Don's gig in episode 3. Jason Don's boss at the art gallery. Jason hates Don, telling him so, and also refers to him as an awful employee. However, Jason later mellows and warms to Don, despite a bump in their relationship when Jason admits he intends to pursue Samantha. However, he later steps aside and it is implied slightly that Jason ends up with Abby. Brian Sam's professor at university and her new boyfriend in Series 3. He is a recurring character only. International broadcasts. Reception. The first series received mixed reviews. The British Comedy Guide said of the show, the 2007 pilot of this sitcom was average at best, lacking both focus and reason. We really enjoyed the full series though, the stronger premise in the new character of Eddie made all the difference. However, Deborah Orr in the Independent newspaper said in a review of the first episode, "It's a dead cert that How Not to Live Your Life will attract no prizes at all. A great deal of humor can be squeezed from observing the lives of stupid men. But Don Danbury is no David Brent, and this new sitcom offers nothing except sound evidence that the BBC has now got more airtime than it can fill. This show is an insult to the intelligence of stupid men everywhere." Harry Venning in The Stage said, "Pity poor Shiner." Copyright Ab Moynihan. "Okay, don't pity her too much, because she's drop-dead gorgeous and clearly in demand as an actor. But it must have been galling to get the second lead in sitcom How Not to Live Your Life, only to discover that the full extent of your contribution would be to look pretty and provide a sensible foil to the show's writer-star Dan Clark. Would it have killed Clark to throw the show's only female character the occasional funny line to deliver? This grump notwithstanding, I rather like How Not to Live Your Life. Clark's unorthodox delivery, combined with Don's almost willful unlovability, takes some getting used to, but this is consistently amusing, frequently hilarious and totally addictive. DVD releases. References. External links: How Not to Live Your Life at BBC Programmes, How Not to Live Your Life at the Internet Movie Database, How Not to Live Your Life at the British Comedy Guide, Time Out feature, interview on timusonline.co.uk.